Yeah, we can, when we go on up, I want to identify some other grasses.
It's like the old story.
There's a ton of gourds in here. There must have been a lot of gourd seed. There were some pumpkins in here. What else? I seen a watermelon up here earlier. The most, or the highest quality plant that I've tested, sunflowers. You wouldn't think a sunflower would be worth a whole lot as far as feed value goes. I tested sunflowers at 274 relative feed value, which is a lot higher than a lot of alfalfas. The cows love this. If you want to make lambs shine before you send them to market, put them in sunflowers. Sheep are really funny to watch. When there's sunflowers, they actually walk over the stalk, push it over, and they eat the leaves as they go. The cows will eat the sunflower head, all the leaves, and about that much of the stalk. And then they'll recycle this part of the stalk back.
What stage are you grazing in?
Soft dough stage. Okay, which that would be, there's this here would be considered hard dough stage. There's some sunflowers in there, but if you were to take these sunflowers, roll them out, they would be sticking in here pretty hard.
Right.
And you squeeze it and it would be milky subs come out. But the cows will consume all of that. But whenever they planted this, having the diversity, if they didn't have the diversity and they would have planted just one or two things and they weren't suited for the dry weather, they would probably have nothing here. So you got to consider that. And we're gonna go up here. There's a cover crop study that they did. I don't know if Christina, she's not coming along with us. There were some different things that do you know what they did on? I know pretty much what they did in the trials. And there's probably electricity in this. Experimenting with. The only unfortunate thing with all these cover crop, they're not allowed to put livestock on them. So they need to write into the grant on taking some of these and putting livestock on them. Because if they would have, you would have seen a huge difference in these. They're all different, Martha, they're all different species, and then they put compost tea on every other, yeah. So.
But I do know that, like, she did half of it was compost tea and then half of it was like a control. And so the control group had far less than the compost tea group even in the first year. It was like 2.5 times more with the compost tea.
Yeah. And this here would have been 2 plots here. Whatever it was that you guys planted in here didn't really grow. And then as you work across, here's 2 plots. This one here would have had the tea. And I want to say it was the other end of this is where the control was. So half of this was control and compost tea. And you can see these would be collard greens for rape. And these actually stockpile extremely well for livestock. sheep, cows, whatever. They're higher quality. I believe it's collard greens.
Collard green.
Yeah. Yeah. Typically they get a lot taller. They'll get about that tall and then have this green.
Like a forage type and not like a...
Yeah. I think it's called dinosaur collards or something like that. If you look, here's some in here. I'm hoping next year that when they replant this, the results will be a lot different. But
They planted seed.
yeah, they planted seed here. Yes, they planted seed here, and I believe that they're going to plant some down below here, and they're going to run the cows across it. And they're also going to take data on how much dry matter it produces. Oh, sorry. This here sorghum sedan grass. Normally it gets a lot taller. Guys have the tendency to want to stockpile this for winter time. However, it's very, very poor quality. If you were to test this plant today, it would test at about 3-4% crude protein. And another thing, it does not stand up well to wind. If it gets wet and gets windy, it will blow it flat, and then once it hits the ground, it's done for it. Gets ate up by the microbes in the soil fairly quickly. So if you want to stockpile something similar to that, corn is probably your next best thing. Up on this section, down below it wasn't quite as good. On the last graze of the year, typically you want to try and graze more than you normally would. And the reason for that is why not utilize it versus let it go back into the soil, because you're going to achieve the same thing with the nutrients going through the cow. Take for instance phosphorus, or not phosphorus, potassium. I believe it's 4 tons of hay. You're going to take about 160 pounds of potassium off the field versus 250 pounds of beef. You're going to take 0.7 pounds of potassium away from the soil. So most of those nutrients are actually going through the cow and being placed back onto the land. And one of the great things is, as you know, it's readily available by the plants. You made a buddy.
Now you did.
Yep. But in this field, one of the plants that come up in here is considered invasive is small carpet grass. I don't have it. Kind of looking for it here. This plant here is ragweed. I believe so. No. Yeah, that's ragweed. Common ragweed. And typically if you see ragweed, and I've seen some foxtail here someplace, right here. Right here's some foxtail. Those are annuals. And typically what those are is Mother Nature saying, hey, we got bare ground, we need to get it covered. And these plants grow very readily. And like foxtail, ragweed, it's very high quality forage. But it's an annual, so it's going to die off, and whenever it dies off, Mother Nature has to replace it with something the following year, and hopefully it's not to the point where you're going to have a lot of erosion.
Is foxtail only palatable before it seeds out?
No, it's palatable depending on your livestock. Some livestock, such as horses, you typically don't want horses to eat foxtail. because these little things get stuck in their cheeks and cause their cheeks and stuff to swell up. As far as cattle go, from the way we've been grazing our cattle over the last 13 years, my cows, there's nothing on the farm that the cows won't eat. So all of this is fair game if your livestock are hardened. And a lot of people will say, well, my cows are babies. Yeah, they can be babies, but if you want them to start eating some of these other plants, you just tighten them up and move them, like 2 times a day. Tighten them up tight and move them a couple times a day for a period of time, and then they'll learn that these plants are actually good. We have cows that will eat bull thistles on our farm now. They got their cows to eat Canadian thistle this spring, and they did a really good job on the Canadian thistle. Yes, sir.
What was the last grazing in here, and what was the frequency of moves of animals?
I'm guessing you moved them once a day, right, Isaac? Yeah. And they were in here, what, 3
weeks ago.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It's not been that long.
Yeah.
I would also like to mention too that we had planted seed for forage seed in the spring, and then it got burned off. So we didn't essentially have anything except for the natives, and we have 47 different natives in here. I cataloged them. Our cows for the whole entire summer, we did not feed them anything except for what you're looking at out here. They did really well, really, really well.
Yes, your cows did. They look great. Yes, sir.
Can you talk about horse nettle as a weed, or can you get them to graze that, or is it
Yes.
poisonous?
Horse nettle's toxic. However, depends on how you look at it. Horse nettle, common milkweed, dog hempbane, or hemp dogbane. There's a lot of plants out here considered toxic. You look them up, they're toxic. However, like horse nettle, it's in the nightshade family. Horses and pigs are probably the most sensitive towards the nightshade families. But the way that I look at it, and a lot of the other guys that I've talked a lot with, if it's diluted in their rations, it's not a problem. Okay? So take, for instance, you go to the pharmacy, you get a bottle of medicine. You take 2 pills, it's medicine. If you take the whole bottle, it's poison. So if you come out here and the whole field's horse nettle, you got a problem. But if it's, on a general rule of thumb, if it's less than 10% of the canopy, you're safe. Getting them to graze horse nettle, my cows readily eat horse nettle. My sheep readily eat horse nettle. And the way we get them to learn how to eat that is to tighten them up again, and they'll learn that it's actually a good forage. And with the aspect of these animals eating all these different plants, each one of these plants contain different each one of these plants that we have growing out here, take for instance over here some asters. This is asters. Asters, whenever I've tested asters, it's high in zinc. Cup plant, it's a native flower, it's high in calcium. Alfalfa's high in calcium. Timothy's high in potassium. So all these plants, if we have them over, there's a broad spectrum or a lot of diversity, it helps reduce the needs of mineral intake into the cows or sheep or whatever you're feeding. However, like the toxic plants, you need to be careful, more so careful with your equine. One of the toxic plants that I totally despise, and the only reason for it is it's dangerous for humans, is white snakeroot. White snakeroot is a native flower, and Abraham Lincoln's mother was known to have died from what they call milk sickness. White snakeroot contains a toxin called trematol, and what happens is if the livestock eat that white snakeroot, they store that toxin either in their meat or in their milk, and then if it's consumed by a human, it could potentially be lethal. So white snakeroot's one of the ones that I totally despise.
Is it
But
very common around here?
I have it growing on my farm, and I've seen it on a couple other farms. Typically, it grows like in the edge of a woods or a wettish area.
I have to look up for what it looks like.
It looks similar to poison hemlock. It's similar looking to poison hemlock. I'm sure that you probably have that out here.
I do have that.
Yeah.
So what about that weed?
We graze it.
Really?
Yes, we we graze it. And it's poison hemlock is considered the most toxic plant in the state of Pennsylvania. And now, am I careful? Yeah, I'm really careful with poison hemlock. You know, I don't want individual animals to get a whole bunch of it because I don't want to take the chance of killing anything. But yeah, we graze poison hemlock. One thing beneficial about horse nettle is horse nettle has a taproot that goes and goes and goes and goes. And then they have like a little tubular. It's usually about that long and about that big around. Down about 16 inches, 12 to 16 inches, there's this little tubular. And what they do is they draw nutrients. Those deep root systems bring nutrients up into that tubular and it's stored. The negative thing about it is horse nettle is a perennial and it's very, very hard to control. So the best thing with horse nettle is not to manage for it to begin with. Normally horse nettle is one of those plants that Mother Nature, if there's bare soil, Mother Nature's gonna, and there's any seed there, that's what's gonna grow your horse nettle. Yes, sir, you had a question.
You're saying tighten up.
Yes.
Talking about, I just want to understand what you mean by exactly tighten up.
Okay, put more animals, put more animals per acre. Okay, I guess that's the easiest way to describe it. Typically, I would say 400,000 pounds to the acre. So that'd be, I'm putting 400,000 pounds. Say my cow herd's 100,000 pounds. I would put that 100,000 pounds on a quarter of an acre for a 24-hour period. That would be 400,000 pounds to the acre. A lot of times in that case, whenever I'm down to 400,000 pounds to the acre, I like to go in like 10th acre increments, and I'll move them up to, I've moved them as many 13 times a day. But certain fields need that pressure. The cows need that pressure to reprogram their minds to eat some of these plants. If I put them on a 10th of an acre, I'll move them like 4 or 5 times in a day's time. Yes, sir.
Do they graze lower then if it's that dense, or you're just?
You have to be, I mean, no, I wouldn't necessarily say that they graze lower, but whenever they go into those with the longer rest periods, there's more forage there. You know, we wouldn't be putting the cows at 400,000 pounds to the acre on this field here because the forage isn't here for them.
How many cows are out here?
You have what, around 30?
Yep.
Around 30.
30 were here.
Yeah, we're gonna go over and see them here in a little bit.
Do you manage the sheep differently in terms of trying to get enough impact from them?
Sheep can be a little bit tricky because the problem with sheep is if there's nothing to eat in their pasture field, they like to get out.
Right.
We're running poly braid. We run two strands of poly braid. I'm not sure what you do with your sheep. But with the poly braid, if there's nothing in there to eat, they get to reaching underneath the fence, and the next thing you know, they'll get their wool caught on the fence, and they take the whole fence down, and you got sheep out. So, however, I've been able to fix soil with sheep that I have not been able to fix with cows. If you watch a sheep graze, their feet never stop moving whenever they're grazing. They're either moving or they're laying down chewing their cud. It just seems like there's no in between. And by having that hoof action and them moving all over the place all the time, if we can get them packed in tight enough where there's enough forage there for them to eat to keep them in, get them in as tight as you can. They distribute their manure better, manure distribution and urine distribution. Like we did an experiment on the farm a few years ago at 800,000 pounds to the acre. We left the cows on 1/10 of an acre for 20 minutes. And we come back through and we had 500 flags. And we marked urine and manure spots. We ran out of flags on 1/10 of an acre. We could have used probably another 250 flags. And that impact and that manure and urine distribution we had on that, you could see that spot in that field for the next 2 years. And it was more productive. Yes, sir.
How will this field be managed in the wintertime?
How will this be managed in the wintertime?
Will you stay off it? Will you bale graze it? How will you manage this space?
This one here, I'm going to assume that they're going to stay off of this year. You're going to try and bale graze up on the flat.
Do whatever you tell me to
Okay. Yeah, so this one here probably, because this here was probably one of your more productive fields. This field here doesn't necessarily need fixing as bad as some of the other fields. And another plant that we've seen a lot of in here that we don't see right now that's here is, there was a lot of hairy vetch in here.
Yeah.
There was a lot of hairy vetch.
That was left over from the RCMP trials a few years back.
Yeah.
Couple of years.
Yeah, hairy vetch is known for its hard seededness. So whenever you plant hairy vetch, only a portion of it grows, and then the seeds that are laying in the seed bank, and it will continue to come up. And whenever you graze this, I believe it was in seed.
I don't know. I did whatever you told me.
Yeah, this was in seed whenever you graze this. Yeah. And typically what we're shooting for is longer rest periods. Having a longer rest periods, one of the problems with plants is if you look at the way they grow, if we keep cutting them every 30 days, those plants have not fully recovered. And what we're after is a plant that's a little bit further along and it has recovered more. So take, for instance, which plant is going to be stronger as far as being able to live. The plant that we cut every 30 days or the plant that we leave grow 60 days, let's say. The 60-day plant's going to be a stronger, more robust plant than our 30-day plant. Any other questions here?
Well, what about grazing hairy vetch? Is it good feed or?
Oh yeah, hairy vetch is actually a really good feed, but it can be toxic too.
Yeah, that's why.
And the toxin in hairy vetch is the seed. More so the seed than it is the plant.
I think that you had us graze it when we had the purple flowers.
Yeah, but some of it was going into seed. Yeah, so yeah, it was, some of it was in seed, and then some of it had the pretty purple flowers on it. Yeah. And the toxin actually attacks the livers in the animals, or can attack the livers. But the seed is the most toxic part of the plant.
Is this a case where if it's diluted with other forages that it's not a problem then?
Not a problem. I've grazed hairy vetch up to 50% of the total ration, and they were in on that particular ration for better part of 30 days. So it's not like they were just in there and then back off. We grazed winter rye, annual ryegrass, and hairy vetch one year, and the hairy vetch was this tall. It just curled and went up that winter rye. It was that tall. You couldn't walk through it. You know how hairy vetch is all viney, and
So
you couldn't walk through
you
it.
like to graze as much as possible. Then, so you grow some rye for the purpose of early grazing.
Yeah. Rye will get you out usually about 2 weeks earlier. If you're to plant cereal rye, it will get you out grazing up to 2 weeks earlier. And then your next plant, typically, as far as grasses go, if you're doing natives, the next one would be Virginia wild rye. That one there comes on early. That would be right in front of your orchard grass. And then typically, like, your orchard grass is your next one in line, and so on and so forth. Probably the latest grass to come on is probably smooth brome grass. Yeah.
In the fall, do you do turnips ever? Try that?
Yeah, I've done turnips. I haven't been real successful with brassicas on my farm because we're low in phosphorus. However, we have grown tillage radishes to 19 pounds. And those there, it's really something to watch the cows eat, a 19-pound turnip or tillage radish. It's about this big around and about that long. And what the cows do is they pick it up, and they don't have top teeth, so they can't like bite a piece off. They pick that up, and what they'll do is they take it out, and then they twist their head and push it off the ground. They break it off in pieces and eat. It's really neat to watch them eat it. Yes, sir.
How do you seed those annuals? Do you drill, overseed, or broadcast?
I mean, that's totally up to you. My preferred method is to broadcast in front of the cows or the sheep. The sheep actually do a better job of seeding if we were going to do something like that. Now, you have to be careful on the aspect of competition. If you're going to put that in a field that has a lot of grass in it, if say that field up on top, if you were to try and put some cover crops in that, they're going to be less likely to be a success than, say, down in here. So you got to take competition into consideration with that. Now, if you're organic and you want to, you can't spray it if you're organic, so tillage, which is not something that I recommend. But yeah, broadcast it in front of your livestock. Make sure you have moisture in the soil, because those little roots, if you put it out there, they germinate and it gets dry, they're done. So yeah, I imagine the cover crops, if anybody's raising cover crops around here, probably having a hard time this year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, cover crops would be really tough this fall because it's so darn dry.
Here's another plant. Can you comment about sun hemp, grazing that?
Sun hemp, yeah, sun hemp. It's kind of a unique plant. It's a broadleaf plant, and it'll grow tall. It will grow up about yay tall. It has yellow flowers on it. It's not one that's typically that the livestock really like a lot. But they will graze it. They'll graze the leaves off of it. It gets the yellow flower on it.
Very tough stem.
It's a very lignified stem. Yeah, that's why I didn't say they eat the stems, because the stems are pretty lignified.
I kind of like using it as a blend with Sudan grass.
Oh yeah.
Like a 50-50 blend. Then you got the legume and you got the grass.
Yep. Put some sunflowers in that too.
Yeah.
I always, if I'm doing a cover crop, it always has sunflowers in it if it's during warm season, just because of the potential quality. And then the sunflowers also help draw your beneficial insects in as well. You have a lot of pollinators come in, and you'll see a lot of beneficial insects.
What rate?
What rate?
You're mixing that with a sort of Sudan.
Sunflowers, I put like 4 pounds with the sorghum Sudan grass. Now I plant my sorghum Sudan grass a little bit lighter than what you'll see recommendations anywhere from 15 to 50 pounds per acre. Typically, I like to put about 20 pounds to the acre, 25 pounds, somewhere in that neighborhood. What rate do you like on your sorghum Sudan grass?
I can't give you a pound number.
Okay, yeah.
I would like you to comment though on the potential toxicity of Sudan grass.
Oh,
To avoid
yeah,
that.
yeah. Sudan grass has 2 toxicity issues, or can have 2 toxicity issues. One's prussic acid, which turns into cyanide gas, and then nitrates. Nitrates can also be an issue. Nitrates usually come in if you... What's flying up there? They're coming to get us. Nitrates are usually an issue if you do a lot of fertilizing, or if you plant in a really fertile soil, or if you have drought. I recommend testing for both of these because they can potentially be lethal. One year I tested for nitrates. I didn't use any fertilizer. I didn't have drought conditions, but it was about, they come out to about 5 times the what they recommended. And where I sent the sample into, the doctors personally called me, and whenever they call you direct, you know there's a problem. They say to me, Mr. Wilson, that sample number, whatever, it's really super high in nitrate, don't feed it. You're either going to abort all your calves or you're going to start killing cows. So what we did is we waited 30 days, we retested it, and normally nitrates don't go down or don't go down a lot, but in this case the nitrates did drop, and we were able to graze it. However, we diluted it in the rations. Whenever we grazed it, we would put them in there for 1/3 of a day, and then we'd move them out for 2/3 of a day someplace else. So they weren't getting a huge portion in the ration. It was a pain in the butt, but we're actually able to use that.
Had you put fertilizer down?
No,
It was surprisingly high then.
yeah, and I don't know, because the soil was poor. I do not know. That wasn't really stressed. That was just one of those.
That's why it's so surprising.
Yeah, it was no drought stress, no fertilizer, but it's just one of those things, and that can happen in corn as well. And your nitrates are closer to the bottom part of the stem. Prussic acid, this is one that everybody freaks out over. And typically where you see the prussic acid on your sorghum Sudan grass is whenever it frosts. Whenever it frosts, it releases the prussic acid. The prussic acid turns into cyanide gas, and then, cyanide is very, very toxic and lethal. So the easy thing to do with that, it's very easy. Prussic acid's not an issue. You get a frost on it, wait 4 or 5 days, and put them back on. They're going to tell you 14 days in all the literature you see, but that prussic acid gas will evaporate and it's gone. If you're really worried about it, you can get test paper and test it. It's very hard to send a sample of sorghum Sudan grass in to test for cyanide gas or prussic acid, because it all evaporates off by the time it gets to where you're testing it.
Is there a problem with prussic acid at an earlier growth stage without frost, like a young growth stage?